Now, South Africa's COVID-19 infections are increasing by the day. A Free State man is the first person to contract the virus from another person here locally. This raises the infection rate to 17. Meanwhile, final preparations are being made at the quarantine site for the 122 South Africans returning from Wuhan in China. But it may not be all doom and gloom. Local manufacturers may score from the dwindling numbers of Chinese imports. Let's get all the angles. Siphamandla Goge joins us from Polokwane and Limpopo, Lindsay Dentlinger and Monique Mortlock and Aisha Ismail all in Cape Town. So Lindsay, let's start with you. Of course, the cabinet meeting, what's the word?
Africans that it's taking every precaution it possibly can to prevent a surge in this outbreak. As you've mentioned, now 17 cases that we know about. When Cabinet met yesterday, that stood at 13. But Minister in the Presidency, Jackson Mthembu, holding a post-Cabinet briefing this morning in Parliament, saying they were very satisfied with the way things are going, the way the Health Minister, Zweli Mkhize, is handling the situation. And it's appealing to South Africans to take good hygiene measures to prevent a further spread of the virus, and just to indicate how serious they are taking this matter. The President will be convening a special cabinet meeting in Tshwane over the weekend on Sunday, specifically and only to discuss one matter on the agenda, and that is the coronavirus and government's response to that, after which the President has pledged to brief all political parties represented in Parliament and also church leaders. Here's Jackson Mthembu explaining what that cabinet meeting will be all about.
It also links to other issues that have been raised as it relates to any other matter that involves other stakeholders, whether churches, whether you name it, whether sports, whether SADC, whether schools, so many. Indeed, Cabinet has decided that let's have this special meeting where we will look into all these areas. Of course, who will be leading us will be the Minister of Health together with the interministerial team. So they will be very key in Cabinet discussing this matter.
All right, Siphamandla, let's go to you in Polokwane. Of course, this is where the 122 South Africans will be brought to from China. Do we know where this quarantine site is?
Well, it's an open secret that is in Polokwane, Limpopo, but we expect the Health Minister, that is Dr. Zweli Mkhize, to officially announce that venue. I mean, the name of the well-known resort in the area has been doing the rounds. People have been commenting about it, but nothing official yet has been announced by government. So we expect that around 6 o'clock, when Minister Dr. Zweli Mkhize briefs the media, he will announce that area, but it's widely believed that it's somewhere in Polokwane, Limpopo, and I can tell you that I've been to the site. It's got all the hallmarks of a site that will host the team that will be coming from Wuhan. It's been taken over by the army. I think R101, which is another entrance to the resort, has been blocked. You can't get through that. It's only soldiers and police who are manning that part of the entrance. The only way you can access the site is through N1, but even then you can't get through the site. It's a very isolated site. It's in the middle of nowhere. It makes sense as to why this group will be taken there. The nature and the design of the rooms is such that they will be separated, and then we have seen some buses that are likely going to pick up that group and bring it to the resort where they will be.
Where they'll be placed. So, Monique, let's talk to you about the business side of this. You've been speaking to local shop owners about how they're being affected by the coronavirus pandemic. What are they saying?
Yes, Shahan, I've been speaking to certain retailers like Woolworths, Pep and Ackermans just to find out from them whether COVID-19 is having any type of impact on their stocks. And what they have told me is, yes, there is a concern that the coronavirus is going to be affecting stock availability of certain items. But what these retailers have told me is they've given the assurance that there are mitigating measures in place to ensure that there's as little impact on customers as possible. When I question them about what these mitigating measures are and whether they could be looking at leaning more heavily on local manufacturers, they didn't want to really comment on that aspect because, you know, over the last couple of years we've seen thousands of factory workers losing their jobs due to this increase in demand for Chinese imports, and we've seen unions like SACTU lambasting retail giants for opting to use Chinese imports instead of locally manufactured goods.
Aisha, you're following the religious angle of the story for us. What are religious leaders saying about how they're being affected?
Well, Shahan, I visited the St. George's Cathedral earlier today, and what's happening is that the shaking of hands, the receiving of communion, and these are common practices and rituals in churches. And instead of having people stay away from churches, certainly the Anglican Archbishop has now called for people to stop or prevent, or rather to reduce the unnecessary touching of people, the physical touching of people. And so when instead of shaking hands you can just nod your head and greet, but more importantly, when people do go up to receive communion, they do not necessarily have to take the wine in the common communion cup, the chalice. They are able to just take the host, and also the host will then be dipped in the cup and then given to those coming up for communion. And what the priest at the St. George's Cathedral did say, that these reduced rituals and practices in no way takes away or reduces the Eucharist.
Yeah.
But I also went to see the Muslim Judicial Council, and they were telling me that they are also doing their bit in order to try and prevent the spread of the coronavirus. And they saying is that they are in contact with the Department of Health, as well as they have doctors advising them. And at this stage, they have not been advised to tell people not to come and do communal prayers at the mosques. But what they did also reiterate that the annual Hajj, the coronavirus might have an effect on the annual Hajj, where of course we know that where thousands of people congregate, and they're waiting to hear from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to find out whether or not this will affect people, and whether or not people can still apply to perform the Hajj.
All right, one last round of questions, guys. Keep them short for me, please. Lindsay, let's talk about the quarantine measures in Polokwane. Is Cabinet actually satisfied with what's happening there?
Well, Jackson Mthembu didn't want to let on where the quarantine site was. As Sipamandla now says, it's an open secret that it's likely in Limpopo. But Mthembu said Cabinet was satisfied that the crew that was bringing the group of students and teachers and others from South Africa back to China, they will land here tomorrow. He was asked whether they would be, how they would be escorted to the quarantine site. He intimated that that would be under police and army guard. But he made it very clear. He said wherever that site was, they didn't want the public to try to approach the site, to try to visit those who were being quarantined. And I should point out that it's not only the South Africans who have been living in China who will be quarantined. Mthembu said it included all the crew on board that aircraft, including the captain of that SAA aircraft, which is one of the airline's top pilots, longest serving pilots. They will all be quarantined for at least 14 days, up to 21 days, before they will be allowed to return to their families and their communities.
So, Sipamandla, you've been speaking to residents. How do they feel?
They are angry. They say they were not consulted. They were not told that the group that will be coming from Wuhan will be brought to Polokwane, Limpopo. They say they would have appreciated if authorities had just consulted them to brief them as courtesy to say we are bringing a group of people from Wuhan. They are not sick. They will be kept here. Just embrace them. There is nothing that will go wrong. So basically they are angry, and some of them were planning to protest outside the possible site where the group will be kept.
United we stand, we are going to go to the ranch. We are going to stand there from 3 o'clock this afternoon. We will be picketing against this move, against the steps that were taken by the minister and the president of our country. We repeat, we respect our president, but he should have respected us as the people of Limpopo and consulted with our people. As the leadership within various branches and structures, we believe that we were supposed to have been consulted first. And we were supposed to be given the courtesy to view our views, instead of a decision being taken on our behalf. Therefore, we say we will meet at the ranch 3 p.m. this afternoon, and we are requesting every member of this province or any organization, pastors be it anybody that loves life, to please come to the ranch at 3 o'clock this afternoon.
How would you respond to those who would say you are overreacting?
Well, they must just tell us when is their funeral, and we'll attend. We'll show them what overreacting is all about.
Hashtag Limpopo is not a dumping site, because some do say, is it Zozibini Twinzi? She didn't, yes, Miss Universe, she didn't come to Polokwane. The Boka didn't come to Polokwane, but then they're bringing coronavirus to Polokwane. Not that those people are infected, but in actual fact, we can say they're bringing coronavirus to Polokwane.
There is no one who wants coronavirus, but virus whatsoever, please. We request our MECs of health and whatsoever to reverse the decision, because we are not happy about that. And then one other thing that I expect those people to go is one military hospital.
All right, Monique, let's continue with you. You've spoken to a worker who's lost his job as a result of the impact this has had on the local economy and Chinese imports. Tell us more.
Yes, obviously this worker, he was devastated when he lost his job. There's just like thousands of other factory workers in the same position. According to research that I went through, about 30,000 people lost their jobs just in the clothing manufacturing sector alone between 2001 and 2010. This number is, of course, higher, a lot higher when we're looking at from 2011 up until 2019. This specific worker that I spoke to, he said one day they just arrived at work to find that the doors are closed. He'd been working there for more than 3 decades, and this specific factory that he'd been working at was making athletic wear for a well-known retailer. But when this retailer instead opted for to get those same garments from China, it is then that the business collapsed. And obviously there are many more stories like his.
Yeah. Aisha, let's end off with you. Of course, how does this affect the annual pilgrimage to Mecca?
Well, I spoke to Sheikh Riyad Fattar from the Muslim Judicial Council, and he was saying that should it happen that Muslims will not be allowed to perform the Hajj, he says, of course, people will be very disappointed because they save and they look forward to going to the Hajj. But he says that their health and their well-being is more important.
All right, we'll leave it right there. Aisha Ismail, Monique Mortlock, Lindsay Dentlinger, and Sipamandla Goge following that story for us, every angle possible on the coronavirus, right here on The Lead on ENC.